right, 8 a.m., you made it back. Or some of you are like, well, yeah. Or some of you are like, no, it's my first time. Well, welcome. Glad y'all are here today. My name is John. I'm one of the pastors. And I feel like I need to give you just like, if you're not thinking about it, to anticipate just a little bit what next Sunday morning might look like for some of you, because we're moving the clocks forward an hour, okay? And so I know the temptation is going to be to come at 9:30. Please don't do that, because there's no room for you, okay? There's no room for you at 9:30 and hardly any room at 11, okay? So 8 o'clock, you picked it last week, you're stuck with it, okay? So that's not true. Thursday's a great option too, but Thursdays, we're having a lot of fun on Thursday. That's an awesome time. So glad y'all are here today. Come whatever service you want to, but there's definitely a little bit more room in here. Last Monday morning, Chris and I, my wife, took off and we went to do the thing that we do every year, where we go hang out with other pastors and their wives, and there's probably about 80 guys and spouses this year, and we got invited into this a couple of years ago, and it's just kind of a unique group because it's people who lead churches very much like ours, independent, non-denominational, and the qualifier is that it's a church somewhere between 1,000 on up to, I had dinner with a guy who leads a church of 40,000, okay? And so it's just sharing best practices and going, hey, I think we have some areas we can fix over here, and you know what? We're not doing too bad over here. So it's just a really good time for us to hang out, and I heard some pretty amazing and incredible stories. I've obviously know guys with multi-million-dollar budgets and dozens and dozens and dozens of staff and indoor playgrounds, and I just want to tell you, I don't want to trade places with any of those guys, except for maybe like the indoor playground, but with 100% certainty, like I just believe, I hope that if you've been around here a little bit of time at all, you understand as well that God's really doing something here among us in this place, and not just in this place, but in other churches in our community. And there are things happening in our county right now where literally some of the stuff we've talked about for years, even this language like, hey, we want to flip the spiritual climate of our community, like I start to see it happening. And so I think we're just in a special season right now, and so praying for personal renewal and church revival and community awakening. And so we kicked off this series last week just really asking the question, what would it look like, okay, for God to bring dead and dying places and people back to life again? And I said it last week, it was just so obvious. I said, hey, I've already fast forwarded into, the notes for this week as well. I just don't want to pass it up again to just say that every miracle is the result of a problem. I know that sounds so simple, but it's so foundational to what we want to talk about again today, because listen, if there's no problem, then there's no need for a miracle. If nothing's broken, then nothing actually needs to be healed. If nothing's hurt, then you don't need repair. If there's no death, then there's no need for any kind of resurrection. And so I just want to start from the very beginning this morning and ask you just to take maybe like 20 seconds to say, and we need to get serious about this very quickly. This will be easy for some of you because you already know, you were thinking about it on the way over here, or you'll be able to find it very quickly. But what is it that you actually carried in here this morning? And can we just find that real quickly and maybe just kind of put your finger on it? And so from the very beginning, I want us to try to tap into that pain or that need or that dying thing that we're actually going to ask God to bring back to life here in a few minutes. And so would you just take 15 seconds and do that and offer up a prayer this morning? So we're going to go to the book of 2 Kings. Open up to the middle, turn left. 2 Kings chapter 4, the first half of your scriptures. Last week we saw an event from the life of a guy named Elijah, okay? Prophet, spokesperson. Today we're going to look at his successor, Elisha. If you're like me, you grew up in church, you're like, always got these guys confused. It's like Elijah was the first guy. He handed things off to Elisha. And I'm just going to do what I did last week. I'm just going to walk through this event, and then I'm going to give you 2 takeaways, and then at the end of the service, I'm just going to invite you to come and pray, okay? So 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8. One day, Elisha went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. So there's a very wealthy, influential woman. They struck up a relationship. We're going to find out here in a second that she is married. And she just says, hey, whenever you're in town, why don't you just stop in and hang out, and we'll have dinner. And when I was a kid in really like kindergarten, first and second grade, I was living in a really, really small town, like so small, like I could walk back and forth to school sometimes. And so just a couple blocks. And so when I would walk home from school, I had to walk by the pastor's house. And this guy that I was terrified of on Sunday was really nice on Monday and Tuesday. And so they would say, hey, whenever you walk by, just stop in. And they would give me cookies, and I started drinking coffee when I was 5 years old, which is probably why I still have it with cream and sugar to this day. But it was literally just, hey, anytime you come by, just stop in, we'll hang out. She said to her husband in verse 9, I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in a bed and a table, a chair, and a lamp for him, and he can just stay there whenever he comes to us. So very common kind of a thing for people who are financially well off, like, hey, we got room up there, let's just add a second floor, has its own outside stairs people could access. It's kind of like the mother-in-law suite before we had one of those, and it's literally a Airbnb for Elisha is what it is, okay? It's going to prove to be a very, very powerful kind of decision, and it doesn't make God have to like her or to do anything for her, but I just want to note that it does kind of put her in proximity to spiritual power. Verse 11, one day when Elisha came, he went up to his room and he lay down there. And he's got a servant, Gehazi, the right-hand man. Hey, call the Shunammite, call the woman. So he called her, and she stood before him. And Elisha said to him, hey, tell her, you've gone to all this trouble for us. Now, what could be done for you? Could we speak on your behalf to the king or the commander of the army? In other words, listen, you're awesome, and you've been really, really kind to us, and you've kind of gone, nothing short of amazing. Thank you. You always treat us so well. So, what can we do for you? Right? Is there anything I could do for you? I mean, I've got some power, I've got some connections, and so what is it? And she replied, sounds odd, but she says, I have a home among my own people. In other words, I don't need anything. All these people around here take care of me, like my man takes care of me, and I'm doing all of this. What I'm doing for y'all is just out of the goodness of my heart. So he circles back to it again, 14, says to his guy, okay, what really can be done for her, Elisha asked. In other words, there's got to be a way that we can show our appreciation. Now, what we know in that really brief descriptor of her is that she's got money, she's got some influence, she's got property, she's very well respected. You ever try to buy a Christmas gift or a birthday present for somebody and you're like, man, they have everything. I mean, I don't know what I would get this person. That's what we're talking about. Except one thing, Gehazi said. She has no son, and her husband is old. Okay? Big age difference. It's like a Bill Belichick story, if that means anything to you. So in the day, okay, a son was everything, right? I mean, when the husband passes on, he's going to take care of the property. He's going to take care of his mom. He's potentially going to carry on the family line, into the future. And oftentimes you were thought by people to be like incomplete. I mean, you're definitely very vulnerable, or even times people say, hey, that's a sign of disgrace and even God's disfavor that you don't have a son. So 15, then Elisha said, that's it, man, call her. So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do for you, okay? Verse 16, about this time next year, Elisha said, you will hold a son in your arms. Like, he doesn't even really ask her, is that what you want to do? Do you want to go through this, by the way? Would that be a good result for you? He just says, hey, give it a year, all right? And then you're going to have a boy. Well, what do you think about that? And she says, no, no, please, no, my Lord, she objected. Please, man of God, don't mislead. This is her objection, okay? Don't mislead your servant. So obviously it's a sensitive topic for her, okay? She doesn't say, oh, man, thank you so much. I put in a prayer card a year ago, and I know people have been covering that, and wow, that's awesome. What it means is just that there's some pain there. There's something associated with this, and maybe they've struggled with infertility for a long time. I don't know. She just says, don't you lie to me, son. Hey, don't you get my hopes up. Just leave me alone. We are doing fine right here, okay? And it's a Tennyson line, I believe, go back to the mid-1800s. You know, it's better to have never loved and lost than to have never loved at all. That's kind of the concept we've got here. And so it just made me think a little bit about, you know, our group here. And I just wonder for y'all, has there's ever been a point like this where you stopped hoping for something? You know, is there something you're like, you know what, I stopped praying for that thing because you didn't want to be disappointed again. You know, I've given up believing that, or I've given up asking for that, or I'm not really interested in whatever it is that you're trying to do. Like, I want to believe, but I don't know if it's even possible for God to answer my prayers. And sometimes we would actually rather go without than to ask God and be disappointed. But 17, the woman became pregnant. And the next year, about that same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. Now, we don't know any details about this, right? There's nothing that tells it. You know, last week when I shamelessly promoted, you know, the fourth grandchild, the grandson, you know, Justice Gray, I was like, oh, okay, 8 pounds, 5 ounces, he's 19 inches long, here's a picture of him, he looks amazing. We don't get any of those details. It's just that there's a baby boy, and I think it ignited her or reinforced her faith in God. And I think this would be a really great place for the story to end, except it doesn't. You read in verse 18, the child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was with the reapers, and he said to his father, my head, my head. Now, we don't know how old the boy is. Some, you know, Bible scholars suggest he's 5 or 6 years old, and here's a kid who just runs out to the field. I'm going to go out and see Dad who's working, and, you know, we're bringing in the crops. And while he's out there, he starts to complain about his head. Now, Wednesday morning, I woke up with a headache, which hardly ever happens, and it just got worse all day long. I had it all day long until my wife says, hey, did you take anything for it? I mean, it's like, okay, well, you think I'm dumb, but actually, no, I didn't take anything for it. So, it just hardly ever happens. But, you know, at least I have some options, right? I could take some, you know, Tylenol. I have ice packs. I have access to a doctor. I could get an MRI if I need to, or a CT. They don't have any of those options. But his father told a servant, carry him to his mother. And, you know, some things haven't changed in 4,000 years, have they? All right? But maybe it's like maybe it's serious, like a brain aneurysm. Maybe maybe it's heat stroke. We don't know. At least he needs some TLC from mom. Verse 20, after the servant lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and 4 words that came very quickly, and then he died. You're like, wow, that really kind of came from nowhere. And I was just kind of thinking about that, going, man, I think a lot of us know that moment. I mean, I do, where you heard that and you're like, wow, I mean, I just saw him this morning. You know, I mean, I just had dinner with them yesterday, or like we were all just together, and there was no way that you actually see it coming, like you couldn't have planned for it. But it would have to be the lowest moment of her life where you were given this promise and you're holding him in your arms, and then he died. Verse 21, she does some interesting things. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut the door, and went out, which I find fascinating because in a culture that moves very, very quickly after death towards burial, like within 24 hours, they're typically doing something. I don't know, maybe it's an act of faith. I mean, maybe it is, hey, I'm going to put him here because Elisha, he's going to come back and he's going to actually deal with this one. I don't know. Verse 22, she called her husband and said, hey, please send me one of the servants. I'm going to need a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return. Now, I don't know if she just doesn't want to tell him or she actually thinks in her mind, hey, it's just a temporary setback. He'll be fine up there by himself, okay? And I'm going to be right back in a bit. She doesn't call the funeral home. She doesn't seem to tell him anything about what's actually going on. It's literally just, I need a ride to go see a man about a thing, okay? 23. And he's like, do you really have to do this today? Like, it's not a special day. It's not like a new moon or a Sabbath. It's no reason you need to see him. Okay, something must be wrong. And she says, that's all right. You're like, well, that's a weird response, okay? It's just, hey, it's all right, which is a weird thing to say after you've lost a son, but it's literally like a Hebrew way of saying it's going to be okay. I mean, maybe not right now, but it's all right in here with my soul. Okay? 24, she saddled the donkey, said to her servant, lead on, don't slow down for me unless I tell you to. So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. Now, last week we talked about Elijah, right? He's essentially Elisha's mentor, and he sometimes retreats to this location, it seems like, to remember him. Okay, it's like a special place where, it's known for worship, God's presence, God's activity, about 20 miles away. So when he saw her in the distance, the man of God said to his servant, look, there's the Shunammite. I think you should run out there and meet her and ask her, hey, are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is the child all right? And she said, everything's all right. So you think about this. He runs out there. Hey, Airbnb lady, you good? Elisha wants me to ask you if everything's good for y'all. And she says, I'm fine. I'm fine, right? But we know everything is not fine, right? Everything's actually falling apart. She's literally crushed. She's hurting. I mean, I hate you a little bit right now. Like the promise of God died in my arms right here. And that gets mixed with this confidence that everything will be all right. So, hey, is everything all right? Well, no, actually it's really not. It's a complete mess. But somehow, this is what she's believing, God can make it okay. Because this can't be the end of the story. 27, when she reached the man of God, so she pushes past him. She reached the man of God at the mountain. She took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, leave her alone, okay? And listen, we have a lot of safety team members littered throughout our building. I think it's probably the safest place you can be in Camden County on a Sunday morning, and most of them you're not aware of. But if you were to try to come up here right now and grab me like she did to him, they'll eventually get here and say, hey, I don't think you should do that. That's what Gehazi's doing. He's pushing her away from Elisha. But listen, if you're in deep anguish, right, if you're just like heavy distress, then they're probably going to let you go. And that's, Elisha's like, hey, just leave her alone, all right? She's in bitter distress, he says, but the Lord, this is interesting, has hidden it from me and has not told me why. So that's just fascinating to me because Elisha is actually shocked, right? I don't really know what's going on because God hasn't actually told me what's going on about this one. And I don't know about you, but it's the opposite for me. I'm actually shocked when I feel like God has actually let me in on a little something. It's the opposite. He's like, I'm surprised God hasn't let me know about that. She jumps in, verse 28. Now we're going to get serious. Did I ask you for a son, my Lord? Didn't I tell you? Like, hey, don't raise my hopes, right? Hey, do you remember when I told you that? Like, I didn't want this. I said, don't do it, right? But here we are. And, at the end of the message last week, I said, I think you should pray for absolutely anything and everything and then see what God does. That I believe he can bring dead places back to life again. And some of us, we heard that and like we wanted to believe that. And then we talked ourselves out of it and we didn't believe it. And then we walked away and we convinced ourselves, okay, well, maybe he does that for other people or maybe in certain situations, but I don't know about me or this one right here. And I know a lot of us, like we don't want to put it out there and then be disappointed in the end because we know when we lose hope, then we pretty much lost everything. So 29, Elisha said to Gehazi, bro, get yourself together. Tuck your cloak into your belt. Take my staff, okay, the staff, which represents God's power, and he's done miracles with it. Take my staff and run. Don't stop for anything, okay? Don't greet anyone. Lay my staff on the boy's face, all right? Okay, don't stop. Take my personal staff. When you get there, just lay it across the kid's face, and that should do it, okay? Verse 30, but the child's mother says, as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you. In other words, this is her way of saying, listen, I get it. He's the assistant. He might be the successor and he's the right-hand man, but don't send me with that. Like, that can't be the answer. I'm going straight to the top here and I am not leaving here without you, okay? You're coming with me. And so she's living in that tension, okay, of hard to understand and can't explain, like I know it's well with my soul, and I'm not leaving God alone until he moves. And I love the commitment and the petition and man, don't send that dude. Okay, fine, send him, but I'm also not leaving without you. And it says, so he got up and followed her. 31, Gehazi, he's ahead, and he laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. He's like, I got nothing, okay, no signs. So Gehazi went back to meet Elisha and told him, hey, the boy, it didn't work. He's not awake. Gehazi, by the way, if you read further, okay, even though he's Elisha's right-hand man, potentially he would be the successor, I suppose, I don't know, that you will come to find out there's something just not quite right with this guy, okay? Like he has the right staff, but he may not actually have the right heart. That's kind of my understanding. And so we're going to try this thing 3 different ways, by the way, right? Hey, I gave my assistant power. I gave him the staff, okay, and laid it on his face. Nope. So Elisha says, okay, let's try this in 32. When Elisha reached the house, there was the boy lying dead on his couch. So he went in, shut the door on the 2 of them, and then he prayed to the Lord. And we don't know any of the words that he actually says or prays here. It's just 34. Then he got on the bed and lay on the boy. It sounds a little bit like last week's story. Maybe that's where he learned this one. I don't know. It's just a little strange. Mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. As he stretched himself out on him, the boy's body grew warm. Okay, so with his whole body, he lays on him, and he just matches it up, okay? Eyes, nose, mouth, hands, he's just kind of mirroring the boy. By the way, I was reading this, and I'm like, man, I'm so glad this is like Old Testament pastoring, because I'm not doing that, all right? Y'all are probably going to die, sorry. But I also just, I just don't think I have that kind of faith. You know, I mean, it's maybe an 18-hour turnaround time to make this trip. All right, she's going to go there, turn around, we're going to come back. Blood's pooling, right? You got rigor mortis, we got coldness, and then to put his hands and his mouth on that boy, I mean, it just, you're like, man, that is gross, but I just don't think I could do it more than if I could or couldn't. I don't think it would work. But somewhere in the process, okay, Elisha is like, maybe it's his faith, right? The boy's body starts to warm. In 35, Elisha is like, all right, let me just walk away for a second. And then he came back, you know, over here, he got on the bed and he stretched on him once more time. And the boy sneezed 7 times. And Elisha said, bless you. And then he realized what happened and opened his eyes. And I'm like, well, why is that significant to say that he sneezed 7 times? And I can't find any reason whatsoever other than just so that we know it happened. Hey, I just want you to know it happened, and it's not here so we can exalt Elisha. It's here so we can see the power of God. Most miracles, when you read throughout the scriptures, you're going to come to find out that they're instant. Right? People from afar. Hey, Jesus, just say the word. I know he'll be healed. And Jesus says, okay, go back home. He's healed. Just like that. It's done. Okay? Speak the word, right? And it's done. But sometimes the miracle, it comes in stages, I guess we would say it that way. Right? There's a man who was born blind. And he cries out. Jesus is walking by and he cries out, Jesus, have mercy on me. And Jesus takes him and they kind of walk aside for a second. And then Jesus basically spits in his eyes and lays hands on him and says, all right, what do you see? And he says, well, I see people, but they look like trees. And Jesus says, okay, well, let me do this again. He touches him again, and then he saw clearly. And I know a lot of us, you know, it's me. We'll just talk about me where I think, you know, well, I prayed about that once, and nothing happened. Or I asked God that one time, and he didn't do anything. And so here in a few minutes, okay, when we come to the end of the service, and, you know, we're going to baptize a couple of people, and we're going to respond in worship like we usually do, I want to invite you to pray about it, and if you've prayed about it before, to pray about it again, and to keep after it. 36, Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, we'll call the Shunammite. He did. When she came in, he said, hey, take your son. She came in, she fell at his feet, bowed to the ground, so she's worshiping. I mean, yes, respect for what you've done, but worshiping who you represent. And then she took her son and went out. So I'll give you two takeaways. Like I said, we're going to baptize people. You know, every week we typically baptize people, or it's available to you if you're like, man, that's what I need to do today. I'm ready to declare Jesus is my Lord and my Savior. I want to demonstrate that publicly. There's a table back there. We'll talk you through it back there at the end if you want to do that. My real invitation today is to pray, okay? Yes, absolutely. Pray where you are in your seat, offer up your own special prayer. But I want to try to help get us in the habit of really coming down here during worship and letting some other people pray for you, okay? So, they're always available after service, but our people are going to be here during the last song. So when I get to the end of this and I say amen, you're welcome to come down there and let those people pray with you and for you, okay? Two takeaways. Here's number one. God's heart is stirred by faithful petition. Okay, God's heart is stirred by faithful petition. And I think this woman is just a really beautiful picture of that, right? She won't leave Elisha alone until he comes with her. Okay, I'm going to keep standing here, and I'm not going away. I'm not actually going to move on without you, your involvement, and your activity. Even Elisha, I think, is a really great picture of this, right? Sends his assistant, sends his staff, which represents God's power, and then he goes himself and tries, two different times, inviting God's resurrection power through his prayer, okay? I mean, Jesus told a story about a woman who just literally kept hammering away at a judge day after day after day, just asking, hey, will you help me out with this one? And finally, it says that he relented, even though he wasn't even a good person, and he literally just says, okay, fine, I'll do this if it means that you'll stop asking me every day, right? And Luke, who wrote it down, introduced that story by saying Jesus told this story on the need to pray always and not give up. And so sometimes the blessings of God, the movement of God, the response of God happens because of our persistence. Hey, God, this is what I want. I'm not letting go until I actually hear something from you. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back the day after that, and then you can expect me the day after that as well. So persevering, dependent kind of a faith, inviting God's activity. And yeah, sometimes, you can call it a miracle if you want, is that God gives you peace right in the middle of all the chaos and a little bit of quiet stillness in your heart, and you can say, okay, it's not what I want, but, she said it earlier, it's all right. It's all right. God's got it. And so a question just to think about for your prayer today maybe is like, what is it that you want badly enough to happen? What is it that you desire greatly enough for God to do that you would be willing to stick with it in prayer? And I think we approach God a lot of times like we're inconveniencing him. Like, hey, listen, I know you got a lot on your plate right now and more important things to worry about. And I mean, who am I? So I hate to ask, like we're intruding or overstepping or it's not our place. Just be reminded, God, your Father, this is your Father, who sees what's happening, who hears our prayers, and I believe his heart is stirred by faithful petition. Okay, number two, miracles occur in our point of weakness and powerlessness. Okay, miracles occur in our point of weakness and powerlessness. Again, with every problem, you have limited, options. Right? You could try to fix it. You can say, okay, I'm just going to accept it, or you could ask for help. And again, remember, every miracle begins with a problem that we can't fix. So if nothing's broken, then nothing actually needs healed. If nothing's dead, nothing needs resurrected. And so you have a woman who appears to be strong and wealthy and self-sufficient until death actually exposes her weaknesses. And so I think there's a relationship or some kind of a correlation between my competence, right, my skills, probably really my pride, and then my dependence or lack of dependence on God. Because listen, when you have absolutely nothing, you ever seen somebody like that? Like, man, they got nothing, but wow, it looks like God is everything for them. And when you seem to have everything, then it can sometimes be, okay, God's a little bit like an afterthought because I have everything I need right now. And so in this moment, right, you read this, you're like, okay, her money, her wealth, like it can't do anything. You could try anything you want to, right? And it's not bringing that thing back or that person back. Y'all have experienced this before. Nothing like a car accident, hey, a health diagnosis to get your attention and realize all the money in the world, right? All the privacy fence, the exercise, your intellect, your best planning and thinking and pride can't do anything about it. No amount of money, right? No size of house, initials on your business card, degrees on the wall that are bringing this, that, or them back to life again. And the miracle, right, it occurs in the one area where she's poor and desperate, the one area where she literally has no control over, the one area she can't do anything about it except to pray. And I think like there are these areas of our life that I guess I would say tend to deceive us into being self-sufficient and independent, right? Pride has a way of kind of pushing us towards prayerlessness. And when I wrote the message in the hotel this week, I was like, I know we don't want to hear this, but sometimes those failures that we're experiencing or the hurt that's happening in our life right now, it's not God's punishment, it's actually God's mercy. Like, well, that doesn't sound right. Yeah, I think it's God's mercy so that we'll actually take a look and maybe realize when a thing is beyond our control, okay, maybe we'll actually then turn our attention somewhere else, really towards God, and we come to Him in prayer then. And for a lot of us, okay, it's not our weaknesses that have kept us from God up to this point. It's actually our strength. Until one day we actually face something that we can't actually handle, right? You can't control it. You can't solve it. You can't heal it. You can't save it, right? New life, okay? New life actually flows from urgent dependence on God. Wealth, strength, strategy can't produce resurrection, but prayer can. And we turn our eyes to heaven, okay? We lift our hands, we fall on our knees, we cry out that the same God who raised a son in a bedroom, an upstairs bedroom 4,000 years ago, raised another son from a tomb. And can I tell you the most amazing thing I think about all these connections here? And the scriptures tell us because of our sins, right? Not only have we become separated from God, but our sins have actually caused a pronouncement on us that we're actually dead in our transgressions. What we need is not to be better. You don't need to try harder. Or what we need is life, right? We don't need to go from bad to better. We need to go from death to life. And so when you and I were actually dead in our sins is when Jesus says He actually chose to lay down His life for us. So if you were to kind of get heaven's perspective on this event that we just looked at, and you look down on the boy, what would you have seen? Well, you wouldn't have actually seen the boy, would you? You would actually see Elisha, who's literally covering him from head to toe, right? Friends, listen, Jesus is our substitute. Jesus, who lays down His life for us and over us, who takes our place. God no longer sees the sins in your life that lead us to death. He sees Jesus covering us. God no longer sees our imperfection, but the perfection of His Son. And so when we surrender our life to what He did for us on the cross, the literal breath of God, okay, the breath of God's Spirit gets breathed into you and you rise up. And now in your lowest moments, right, we go to God because He cares for us. All right, I feel hopeless, but I'm believing somehow all can be well in the end. And it is because of the empty tomb of Jesus we have hope that it could be well with us even in the most painful of situations. And I'm going to invite you to pray over some of this stuff today. As a matter of fact, I'm going to invite you to stand right now, if you would, while I pray. And then we're going to respond in worship. We're going to baptize. But again, I think if you could tap into that thing at the beginning today where you're like, okay, this thing is not, I have no control over this thing happening in my life right now. What is it that I need to ask God to step in and do? What is it that I want? Whether He does it or not, what is that thing I can petition Him with persistence about one more time? So when I'm done praying, you're welcome to come down here and let these people pray with you. Lord, this morning we just come to You. We say, just how amazing it is that even you, Jesus, show up in these events in the Old Testament time and time again. The picture of you, what it looks like to hear people, to respond to people, to save people, to cover people with your life. God, to breathe your Spirit into us. And God, that's what I would pray for us in this room today, God, that those places where we have pain, God, those places where it feels broken, those places where we feel out of control or helpless or at a complete loss, God, today we would come to you one more time. God, maybe we will come to you for the first time today and ask you, God, just to bring those things back to life again. God, today we ask you to heal. We ask you to restore. God, we ask you to mend. God, we ask you to solve. God, we ask you to bring peace into our hearts to believe that it can be okay. God, we ask you to save. God, today we're just so grateful for Jesus. God, we're grateful for what he's done for us. God, what you offer to us through him. And we just want to pray these things today in that name. Amen.